पद्मश्री आप ले लीजिए मेरे बिहाफ से, मुझे कोई शौक नहीं पद्मश्री लेने का. मेरा नाम शक्तिमान पद्मश्री के भी बहुत ऊपर है.
This is just going to be a rant mode video, so bear with me today. The last few days have really bummed me out when I observe the state of the film industry in terms of creativity and the inflated egos that refuse to evolve. Oh, by the way, new background. I'm going to work on it, so just get used to it. I have to tell you that my biggest fear as a content creator is becoming this old, senile, out of touch, and negative shell of a man. And for the scariest, for me to never notice such a change in me. As more time passes, more people get disinterested in the content when all you project is negativity. That, coupled with clear signs of being out of touch, is a recipe for disaster in a career that is anchored around creating a bond among strangers. I know the world mostly sucks around us and we are naturally going to become pessimists, but when it reaches a point of no return is where I really get concerned. And this is where I feel Mukesh Khanna is with his endless rants regarding the IP of Shaktimaan and what it means to play the superhero in front of camera. You remember when Sony had announced that it was going to create a Shaktimaan film, the level of interest and excitement it garnered, the genuine hype among film fans when rumors were spreading that Ranveer Singh and Basil will collaborate on the same. Imagine knowing very well about the hype surrounding the title and the careful anticipation with which the audience wants to see this version of the superhero on the big screen. And you all over it. All, mind you, all because your inflated ego cannot pass on the baton. Shaktimaan was celebrated on TV in its heyday for the novelty of seeing an Indian superhero on screen. We had very little of them back in the day. And what happens in an atmosphere that is heavily relying on existing IPs and the factor of nostalgia is that you hold onto it for dear life. If Mukesh Khanna had some foresight, he would make sure to get a huge piece of the pie in the theatrical run of the film, while allowing the likes, presumably, of Sony and someone like Basil to take creative control. But what happens when you believe your own hype, where you think the impact of a figure is much larger than it actually is that the cardinal sin becomes a part of your personality. And that, my friends, is delusion. You, at the age of 66, still start believing that you can pull off the superhero role. You hold a press conference while barely fitting into the costume. You badmouth everyone in the industry, claiming that they are not worthy enough to play the superhero. In the process, burning all the creative bridges that could have made this superhero figure not only celebrated among millennials, but the Gen Z, who are not well versed with how the show was celebrated on cable television. Seeing the press conference as Mukesh Khanna is stuck in his ways reminded me of uncles in family gatherings who refuse to listen in a conversation. You know, people who don't yes and a conversation but like the sound of their own voice. So they just go on tangents, a clear sign of narcissism where there is no sense of introspection, evolution, and all these dated individuals speak about is hamare zamane mein. Always notice actors of the generation who reached their peak in the 90s only boast about their time, referencing it as the golden era of cinema, while clearly the content at the time was also not just knockouts year in and year out, but had its fair share of, I would actually say, argue most featured in embarrassing content. Mukesh Khanna, in my opinion, is in the middle of self-destruction regarding the popular IP of Shaktimaan, something for which he could have made bank had he just set aside his ego. Speaking of which, I think from my limited experience of seeing interviews, the evolution of the Indian film industry in the last decade or so, I have come to the conclusion that if a filmmaker, actor or producer is boastful or overconfident about their product or their streak of hit films, the industry and fate in general has a way of giving them a reality check one day or the other. This is specifically true for what you see with the interviews given by the Kanguva producer. While sarcastically stating that Kanguva will be destined to make 2,000 crores at the box office, he was also seen speaking about how Hindi cinema will take at least 15 to 20 years to get to the level of the South Indian film industries. When you see the result of Kanguva as a story and the reactions of him to the feedback, restricting all the hate towards the film only to decibel levels of dialogues and the background score, I have also realized that people would love to live in a fool's paradise rather than deal with reality. To be in the comfort of their ivory towers surrounded by yes men that massage their inflated egos versus having to deal with reality, introspect, and actually put active effort towards change. I can think of several instances where actors, directors, and producers become increasingly egotistical regarding their position in the industry or an upcoming title. I remember the years preceding the launch of the cast of Student of the Year. Many people were debating about the trajectory of the three actors and where they stand among their contemporaries. When Varun Dhawan was asked about whether he would trade his place for any of his contemporaries, he said he would never want to do that because he has never faced failure. This is prior to the release of Kalank that bombed at the box office. I think the real test for any actor in their career is actually how they deal with failure, adapt, and still fearlessly challenge themselves.
Sounds bizarre. I almost manifested in giving a flop. First couple of years, like you said, it was just working. Everything was working, and I knew it's going to work. I just knew it's going to work. And then before something didn't have to work, I knew it's not going to work.
This is a similar phenomena that Ranveer Singh was coping with, especially post the pandemic. Almost floating in the air with his success, accepting every award under the sky, giving interviews about himself and the craft incessantly, and in many cases, discussing other projects and actors slyly while basking in the glory of commercial success. The exhaustion of Ranveer Singh appearances was palpable, and failure after failure followed with titles such as 83, Circus, and Jayesh Bhai Jordar. Of course, there was some relief with the film like Rocky or Rani Ki Prem Kahani, but there was an active effort in just reining it in, making your presence with the public an event rather than a regular occurrence, and more importantly, laying primary focus on the job at hand. Speaking about hyping up titles way more than one should ever do prior to their release, we have seen it so many times how celebrities build the hype of projects so much that you go in with far more expectations to the theatre, a recipe that often leads to disappointment. I remember the marketing of Devara and Junior NTR and Karan Johar kept on speaking about this jaw-dropping climax, this twist that hooked Junior NTR to the project as a talent, and that will surely make the audience's jaws drop. And in sharp contrast, it was actually the most underwhelming quality of the project.
And I'm vouching for that last 10 minutes of Devra.
Yeah.
The emotional ride the audiences are going to.
Similar to what Abhijat Joshi was doing with the promotional run of Donkey. While I'm all for boasting about the work ethic of the talent involved in the project, but to give exaggerated statements like how this is the best project Hirani has ever directed, how Shah Rukh Khan's performance will leave us spellbound, it's these extreme statements that absolutely kill projects in my opinion. Remember this whenever someone is telling you that they've never seen anything like this or get weirdly emotional about a project because of what it means to them. It's a very dubious line for building hype for the film, raising my skepticism regarding the quality of the project. I remember when the team of Liger sat together and they kept on praising one another for the dedication shown by Vijay for the role. While this is admirable, the producer gets extremely emotional in the interaction, putting Liger in the pedestal on how important backing projects with content is for them. When you see the quality of Liger as a story and equate it to the misplaced emotion behind the producer and actor, you realize that the Delulu land is way more concerning than what you originally thought. There was this clip that went viral of Vijay speaking to Karan Johar before the trailer of the film dropped, and how people are going to absolutely lose their mind when they see it. And it was true. The loss of brain cells in the entire marketing run of the film was unprecedented, leaving aside the film and what I suffered through in the theatre. This same misplaced emotion was at its manipulative best during the marketing run of Adipurush, where not only did the likes of Manoj Muntashar take on a condescending attitude towards the criticism flung towards the movie, but the likes of Om Raut believed that they could protect themselves behind the garb of religion and gods, hoping and praying that they somehow skim past the vitriol of the film that it deservedly got. Pleading and begging the producers to dedicate a seat to Lord Hanuman in theatres, I really want to know the conversation Prabhas had with him when he called him to his room.
On behalf of all of us, to our producers and distributor, that please keep one seat for our Hanumanji. He will come to see Rama.
This is just going to be a side note, okay? And I know this is totally left field, but I have a huge problem with smugness. Smugness that especially seems forced rather than an inherent part of someone's personality. And I remember just being visibly annoyed of Siddharth during the marketing run of Indian 2, overhyping the film, interjecting and answering to the media, sometimes even to the surprise of Kamal Hassan and Shankar. This was just a weird tangent, but I wanted to know whether I was the only one getting slightly perturbed by how he had a certain air about himself during the promotional run. I want to know your thoughts as well in the comments. This smugness is something that Anurag Kashyap also showcased before the release of his biggest project, Bombay Velvet, unnecessarily engaging with someone like KRK. A director of that stature, in my opinion, should never even acknowledge the noise aimed at just extracting a reaction. The Delusion Pro Max circumstance, however, was at its peak with Vashu and Jackie Bhagnani prior to the release of Bade Miyan Chote Miyan, claiming that the film will make over 1,000 crores, genuinely believing as if they had some gold mine with them.
Chote Miyan, चिंता मत कर, 1100 crore confirm है worldwide, 100%.
It was recently announced that Shahid Kapoor's Ashwathama project with the company has been shelved. And can I just say, I am not surprised. I in no way, shape or form intend to instruct someone on how one should act prior to the release of their films or regarding the IP they associate with. I am in no way saying कि सबको बेचारे की तरह रहना चाहिए. But when it's dramatic, fake and exaggerated, I just want to tell public figures, we can see right through it. You are not fooling anyone.
बहुत छोटा मुंह बड़ी बात है, लेकिन किसी ने कहा यू आर लाइक इंडिया स्पीलबर्ग.